I can honestly see a connection, though, between kind of where you started
totally,
and this.
which that's what's horrific about it, is that I shouldn't still have been doing that in 2013.
Calm and meditative. Breathe in. Breathe out directly into the microphone. Make it sound really terrible. You're in a hurricane in your ears. You don't want one in there. It's a problem. Hello, and welcome to Did I Do That? It's an ASMR chill podcast about making graphic design and making mistakes because it's all part of the process. I'm Sean Schumacher, and joining me today, a very special guest. Boy, it's really weird to say this as slow as I'm saying it right now, but that's what we're doing, I guess. She's a designer, illustrator, and letterer, originally from Cape Town, South Africa. She's worked with the likes of David Carson in New York City, O'Neill out in sunny California, and Publicist Machine in Cape Town, all while exhibiting around the world and winning awards, including the Silver Cans Lion for packaging design and the D&AD wooden pencil for illustration. These days, she serves as a senior art director at Murmur here in Portland. It's Dani Loureiro. Hi, Dani.
Hi, how you doing?
Welcome to this Sleepy Time ASMR podcast. So the reason I'm trying to chill out the vibes is because when I got here to the art building this morning, there was a fire alarm going and I had a really chill morning up until that point. Like, I went and I got a tea and I got a nice little pastry that I thought would be good, and actually was pretty strange. Turns out key lime and blueberry don't make a good combo. Isn't that weird? Oh well. But so I got here and the fire alarm's going off. What would you do if you got to a building and the fire alarm was going off?
I probably would not go in the building.
I was not that wise. I did indeed go in the building. And it there was some sort of alarm condition. So I contacted the campus public safety office on their emergency line because, alarm sort of signifies this should be taken care of post haste. They seem to think that was not a priority. And they transferred me to another office that basically said, we'll get to it when we get to it.
And the alarm's going off the whole time?
The alarm's going off the whole time for a full hour and a half, as well as whatever amount it's been going, possibly into yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Who knows? So yeah, I get here and I'm like, hey, I got a recording session in like an hour. How's this going to work? So, yeah. But the good news is they did indeed get the alarm turned off, or really just silenced. I looked at the panel and it does seem to actually still be in an alarm condition.
And do we know the source of the alarm? Is there any actual fire that we should be worrying about?
That's a great question. I don't know that they investigated that very thoroughly because it didn't seem like anything had been done other than silencing the alarms. But yeah.
Too funny.
So I guess if we start to smell smoke,
we should run.
We should run.
We should run.
Like, for sure, because it's not going to alarm any more than it did. Okay, I'm gonna break us out of our calm ASMR condition because I've mostly forgotten how to do that. Okay, hi Dani.
Hi, how you doing?
What a weird show this is.
It's great fun.
How's your morning been?
Yeah, it's been good. just trying to look at old work and get ready to come chat to you. And
yes, you actually, like, we haven't had a lot of folks bring in physical work as of late, but yet you have a whole portfolio full of work.
Felt very early 2000s with my portfolio case, I have to admit. I don't even know if the designers these days have anything in a portfolio case.
Well, no, yeah, I don't think, because I mean, here at PSU, we don't really even have like introductory drawing as part of the design program. So I don't really think a lot of our students ever experienced the portfolio case.
Having to have it all in plastic sleeves, look after it for years.
Yeah, it's this gigantic thing. I used to, when I went to UNLV back in Las Vegas for my undergrad, Las Vegas is a very windy place. They say that Chicago is the windy city. Well, Las Vegas should have some merch that just says Las Vegas. It blows, because it sure does. It really does. And there were numerous times when I was trying to cart that around from the art building to the parking lot where that would just turn into a sail.
Oh, completely.
And, you just get kind of dragged along.
The trick is to like angle it into the wind.
Oh, see, that's smart.
Yeah.
You're working on expert mode with this one.
I'm from Cape Town. It has to be the second windiest place in the world, if Las Vegas is the first.
Well, yeah. So you're from Cape Town. I don't really know anything about Cape Town, basically. Like,
it's a very beautiful city. It's at the bottom of Africa, and it kind of looks like San Francisco a little bit, I suppose.
All right.
It's pretty developed. It has the Indian Ocean on one side, the Atlantic on the other. It's a peninsula with big mountains in the middle. It's just a really cool place.
So it's like San Francisco, except there isn't a giant letter X on top of a building strobing lights into people's apartments.
No, there isn't. Luckily, we haven't got that yet.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure every city in the world will have one of those eventually.
Sure. Especially considering Elon Musk is from South Africa. I'm sure it's coming soon.
Yeah,
it's got to be there pretty soon. We do have Table Mountain as the backdrop, which we light up at nighttime. So maybe that's going to be his next canvas to project.
What do you mean light up?
So Cape Town is like a city bowl and has a big mountain behind it, which is completely flat on the top. So it looks like a table. It's known as Table Mountain.
Oh.
And at night, they have these lights at the bottom that shine up the mountain to light it up because it's very beautiful and it's iconic. And then we run out of electricity in South Africa. We have power cuts all the time. So now they have to turn those lights off.
Well, at least they're turning them off. They're prioritizing lighting.
They are. But it was very beautiful when I was growing up. Cape Town was always lit. The mountain was always lit.
That's incredible. Cool. So you grew up out there. Like, what is the sort of design culture there more generally?
Design is amazing in Cape Town at the moment, actually. It's particularly illustration. We have some amazing illustrators, like Studio Muti is from Cape Town. They do some of the best illustration in the world right now. It's a really interesting place to have grown up. Obviously, it's had some kind of tumultuous political past, and it's got like some amazing African influence in design and like aesthetic at the moment. And it's just a place that people are making and doing beautiful things. So I'm really thankful that I grew up there.
I mean, it sounds like a great place to kind of get inspired too.
Absolutely.
If you're like what was the thing that sort of pushed you into design, like education wise?
I've just always drawn. I think I'm a designer who just likes to draw, and so design was a way of making money by drawing. It's kind of where I ended up. But I've just always done that, and I from a young age I got really into words and letters and the shapes, and so I used to do a lot of hand illustration. And then I came to the States to study. I went to SCAD down in Savannah, Georgia, and I did a couple of like illustration classes, and then I did a graphic design class, and I just really enjoyed bringing the computers into it and learning how to do that. I had never done anything digitally until I got to SCAD, which is kind of crazy now to think about.
You'd only been working physically.
I'd only been working physically. Yeah, I used to do everything by hand, which is bizarre.
Wow, that's incredible. So were you doing like drawing classes back home?
Yeah, I did art the whole way through school.
Yeah.
So I was drawing and painting. That was kind of my focus until I got to college, and then decided design was where I was going to go, and learned how to use Photoshop and Illustrator, and the rest is history. Now I don't draw anything by hand anymore. Now I have a big Wacom, and all I do is draw on my Wacom.
Hey, I mean, that's still more than a lot of folks end up with.
Yeah.
I think back to my own, I started out wanting to kind of do a similar thing, although my dream was to become a newspaper cartoonist, which is not a realistic dream by any stretch of any imagination.
Be a fun thing to do, though.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want to live like Jim Davis and have just a mountain of Garfield things in your Garfield mansion, and then you have 50 million Garfield employees that are drawing the cartoon for you every day.
I wonder if they get really like particular about all the like shapes of the ears and the eyes and all that stuff. If all those different employees have to get it absolutely right.
It's got to be like animation
like
where
a
there's
manual.
a model guide.
Oh, completely.
And here's how Garfield turns.
Yeah.
And
here's his 50 ears you can choose from.
Exactly.
25 whiskers.
Garfield
like
doesn't do this. Don't do this to Garfield.
Could you imagine designing that brand book for Garfield? That'd be so funny.
Audience, if you have the in for the Garfield brand book, which I am certain must exist,
it has to exist.
I want to see
it. Yeah, me too.
I need to know what Garfield can't do. It would truly be the highlight of my life because I was such a Garfield fan when I was a kid too. I owned all those weird long books.
Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah, you're kind of coming into your own design wise after you come into the States. Like, what drew you to SCAD?
I don't really know. I think I got excited about the idea of going to a design specific or art university. SCAD had 17 different majors in art and design.
They're a big school.
And they I think just coming from where I grew up and the kind of schools that I went to, it was just exciting to go somewhere for 4 years and just focus on creativity and design and get to explore all different mediums. I'm not really sure why I decided it was a good idea to move halfway across the world by myself. That was challenging.
That's a big project.
At 18, that's quite a lot. But
18 is also, though, the perfect age for it to be like... Yeah, I don't know how big a problem this is.
Yeah, no, totally. I had no idea. I arrived in Savannah by myself. I went and stayed in like a day's inn down on the riverfront. It was cold.
Oh, no.
And all I could say was like shit for like 3 days. I just like looked around like, oh, shit. The South is very, very different to Cape Town. And it just was, it was a amazing experience, but completely changed my life. Obviously,
the vibes were quite off immediately.
Very, very different.
Did you have? Because I was one of the folks too who got to their first college and dropped out immediately, like a week in. Did you have thoughts of being like, oh, fuck this?
Absolutely, I wanted to. I think it was more just the location. I mean, Savannah is a great city, but it's just very different to where I'm from. And so I think in the beginning, it's just that adjustment. I tried to transfer to Parsons in New York a couple of times.
Oh, wow.
But just credits wouldn't transfer and would end up having to redo a bunch of times. But I'm glad I stayed in Savannah. It was great. It's a small town and everybody goes there for the art school. So people are from everywhere and we had a great community. It was definitely a fun, interesting place to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like the creative hub of Georgia, in a lot of ways. Like,
yeah, it is. It is, and it was a really cool experience to just see such a different part of the States and a different culture.
Yeah.
As soon as I graduated, I moved to New York, and then didn't go back to live in the South. But I think there's a lot of charm in the South. I definitely enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, but maybe not those days in days.
No, didn't need to go back to the days in.
So yeah, like what sort of stuff were you doing when you were in school?
In college or high school?
Well, in college.
That's SCAD. Gosh, everything. So they made you do a whole bunch of 2 years of like intro to design and drawing and painting and stuff like that. And I had done a lot of that in high school already. So just doing big, weird canvases and painting and that type of thing. Nothing terribly experimental, I wouldn't say at that point. But definitely got to do some sculpture where they gave us a block of concrete and some chisels. And every time your hand slipped would like grate your fingers and all your skin would come off. It was pretty fun.
Wow, that's hardcore.
Yeah, it's probably the cheapest material they could find for like the intro to sculpture class. Some aerated concrete that you could just like sharp like knives every time you fell and cut it with your hands.
Health and safety. Why do we need to care about that? I do want to back up a little bit, though, because you also brought in some work, from what I understand.
I did.
I'm amazed that you even brought work. Like, there are so many people who don't have the coming to a completely different continent problem that just have nothing.
I don't have a lot of my college stuff. I was surprised. I kind of went back. All my hard drives from those days don't work anymore. You put them in and they just click, and so I don't have a lot of that work. But these posters, they were kind of, they were in my room for years, and I loved them, and they really were kind of what my start of me liking to draw letters and drawing words, and so I've kept them because I'm sentimental about them. They're kind of terrible, but they're still cool.
I mean, that you always end up in that boat, though. Yeah. Like, there's the stuff that is just objectively, when you look back on it, like, this is not very good.
Yeah.
But yet, like, you can still put yourself a little bit in the mindset of like, wow, this was so important.
It was, and it was just like pure creativity at that time, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of them I'm borrowing from advertising and posters that I saw in those days, so it's not completely unique illustrations necessarily. Maybe I'm like borrowing things or lettering styles, but it's what got me into it. So it's a cool thing to look at.
I mean, it sounds great to me.
Okay.
Do you want to get some of that
Sure,
out? I would love to take a look out of that big portfolio case.
I know. It's very, it's aging myself here.
I mean, this was the thing up until 5 years ago, basically.
Yeah, 5 years ago. That sounds about
Yeah, sure.
So these are posters that I did when I was in high school. Colored pencil and ballpoint pen.
So I'm holding this is like 20 by 30, right?
Yeah, huge. I'm sorry.
It's a humongous poster, and it is all drawn by hand. It is all colored by hand. It's really got a weed aesthetic, I will say that. It's kind of capturing that sort of Grateful Dead type energy, like sort of Art Nouveau by way of, the late 1960s kind of vibe.
It is. Well, I mean, it was all inspired by the surf scene. A lot of the artwork around the advertising in the 90s surf industry was pretty amazing. You'd have these full page ads that were just these elaborate illustrations, and I think I got a lot of inspiration from that.
Wow. Because I mean, this is such an ambitious piece for. Does it say you're 14 in the corner here?
I think so.
Yeah, you are.
It's very young.
Age 14, you are doing this really ambitious work. There's a lot of precision in this too. There's a lot of thought that goes into how this is balanced. But you're also thinking about lettering a lot because
yeah.
I mean, you really have that Davida kind of lettering down there.
It does seem to be very 1960s inspired.
Very much so. We got a couple others here to look at too.
You can also see from this one, I if you ever had a rotaring pen, it was those pens with those different size nibs that you could change. It was like an architect's drafting pen.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've seen those.
I had those when I was in high school, and I was obsessed with them. And so they had a fine tip that I think was a 0.05 or something tiny. Yeah. And that poster is all drawn with those pens and then colored in.
Oh my God.
Detail and pattern was a big thing.
Wait, so you're not even laying down pencil before you're doing this?
I probably had some pencil to help me. I can't actually remember. It's a very long time ago.
It looks pretty freehand, but these are some very thin lines.
very thin lines. Took a very, very long time. I think that's where all my evenings is an angsty teenager sitting in my room and drawing with a very skinny rotary pen.
Yeah. The amount of time that you have when you're a teenager that you don't realize you'll never have again. Oh, I know. So incredible.
Your poor parents. So you just disappear to your room and you're just gone for the whole evening listening to your music and just drawing by yourself.
Yeah. I'm making another gigantic poster, Mom and Dad.
It's going to take me about 6 months. It's fine.
Yeah. There's so much density in this. You have sections in the middle. There's this sort of peace sign. Or yin-yang sign, I should say. And around it has this border that is just completely patterned with this high density, every element has an interior pattern in it.
It does.
And
there was a lot of that.
This border is just a half an inch thickness all the way around, and yet it contains so much stuff.
I know, it really does.
And that's 1% of the real estate of this poster.
I think there must have been something meditative about sitting and drawing with such a tiny little pen and just making patterns. I think it was kind of almost like doodling to a certain extent. As you can see with that one, I have a lot of overlaying of things. I got very into the idea of transparencies and where if two shapes overlaid, what would happen to the pattern or the color where they mixed. And it was busy time. every connection has its own different style of overlay too. Yeah. It's this is such an ambitious thing to take. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
I'm not surprised when you said this took 6 months.
I'm not sure it was 6 months. I'm making a joke, but yeah, it was a long amount of time. But I think I just enjoyed the drawing process. I think still to this day I enjoy the drawing process. I probably try to turn every project into a drawing project, which is not what you should do, but that's what I do.
You got to follow your heart.
You just got to draw.
Exactly.
That's what I want to do.
We got a couple laminated ones here,
I know.
too.
These are up on the walls in my bedrooms for my teenage years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So were these your favorites?
No, I think I think my parents were nice and supportive, and they got them laminated for me so that they didn't look tatty on the wall in the bedroom, because my mom's quite a neat person. I think she wanted my room to look good. And so she made sure that they weren't all peeling corners and looking terrible.
Well, absolutely. There's some kind of collage-y elements in these too.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the one that I looked at first was a year before this one, and I feel like you could see a lot of growth between this one and like the bigger one. Like
Possibly.
like your handling of lines and fills are like so much more precise. I'm guessing this is well before you got those like architect pens too.
Probably. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but like it's still like there's a lot going on. There's like metallic ink in here too.
I was all about the gold and silver pens. All about those. I still am. I love them. My favorite thing.
It's kind of magical to be able to do. Well, it's like, you know, it's like putting metallic spots in a print piece.
Oh,
where
completely.
Like,
it's the best.
oh, it's shiny.
It's shiny, and let's get it under the light. I did a couple of paintings when I was in high school where I had metallic paint, and I had this one picture, very kind of dark picture with this girl's face looking at you, but if you turned sideways and the light caught it differently, the head turned because it was metallic paint, and so it looked like it looked at you that way, and I thought that was amazing.
That's kind of magical,
very
actually.
Dark and twisty, but it was pretty fun.
I mean, whose high school days aren't dark and twisty, ultimately?
I know. But yeah, as you can see, lots of patterns, lots and lots of stuff going on.
And there's a lot of precision in this one. This is like a full poster grid.
I'm sure it was influenced a lot by the posters and stuff I was seeing at the time. Like I definitely can't claim all of this to be totally original. I'm sure I was using lots of references, but
well, we all have to do that, I feel like, before you can really like develop what is your sensibility. And like these were pretty important to like getting you onto the next thing.
Totally. Oh yeah, that's another type piece.
Was this high school as well?
No, that was a little bit older. That was probably like college.
2013.
Yeah, like more recently. Also, way too many patterns. Probably should have stopped doing the patterns a long time ago. 2013
was the heyday of intense patterns, though.
Yeah.
But like, I can honestly see a connection though between kind of where you started
totally,
and this.
Which that's what's horrific about it. Is that I shouldn't still have been doing that at 2013. Should have learned my lesson a long time ago.
No, but you followed your path and you got something really cool out of it.
Yeah,
like,
that's funny.
This, I mean, I could totally see this like up on a website. It's got all that like beautiful hand lettering, like, and then, you know, just like the framing device of the kind of stuff that like Jessica Hish was putting up.
Totally.
Like,
and then these are just some drawings from college. These are the only two things I still had. They're self-portraits. As you can see, I was taking myself very, very seriously.
oh my God, you were taking yourself so seriously.
So seriously.
This one's a little ghostly, but it's really well rendered.
I think it was for a foreshortening exercise. They're learning about, like, you know, the hand in the foreground.
Yeah, you've got sort of a mask in your hand that you're holding, and it's pretty damn well done, I would say. Like, but it is very moody.
It is. You know, this is, as you can see with this one, I have my little African mask, and I was living in Georgia, and I was away from home, and holding on to my identity as South African, and you know, probably a little moody.
And then this is you at the day's end.
This is me at the day's end, wondering what the hell.
I can practically hear the fluorescent light above you just buzzing.
Oh, totally.
Going in and out.
Totally.
Those are really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, they're funny. Those are the only things that I've held on to. That's probably just because it's interesting to see how you see yourself at different phases of your life, and that was
It can be interesting and terrifying all at once.
Totally.
I mean, you know, all the stuff, even from the first time that I moved here, like I think back on it, I'm like, what was I doing? So after you finish at SCAD, like, do you go back to South Africa to work at an agency?
I went to New York, and I worked in New York. I interned with David Carson for the summer.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then I decided to move back home. I was missing my family, and I'd just been away for a long time. So I moved back to Cape Town. And I actually I took a break for a little while of working in like traditional design and advertising. And I actually went and worked in the surf industry for a couple of years.
Damn.
I joined a European kite surfing company and did product design and all their graphics. And thankfully, I can't find any of that stuff. Because the marketing stuff that I was putting out for that poor company was kind of scary now to think about. But what it did give me exposure to is designing wetsuits, which is also a kind of a funny product to get involved in. And I learned how to surf, and I was surfing a lot. And so from there, I got a job to go work for O'Neill in California. And so I moved out to California, and I went and worked for O'Neill in Santa Cruz for 3 years. And that was just the most fun, wonderful job. I loved that. And I got to travel a lot, and I wasn't doing any real graphic design then. I was doing product design. So I was the O'Neill women's wetsuit designer, and I designed all the women's and kids' surf gear.
Oh, so you were just in wetsuits?
Just in wetsuits, just in product. I did all the graphics for them, and we did a lot of graphics for some other kind of more surf-specific stuff, not just wetsuits. But so I got to do some fun like fabric prints and screen printing and that type of thing, which was really fun and creative. But it was specifically product-focused. I was a product designer. I wasn't a graphic designer. And then after that, I decided to travel for a while and then move back home and decided that I wanted to get back into like my pure design roots. And so that's when in Cape Town, I joined an agency and I just started illustrating. Cape Town has the most, as I said, wonderful illustration scene. And so it was really inspiring to be around all these people just doing this really beautiful work.
Yeah.
And so I got back into doing that, and that's kind of got to me to where I am now.
That's incredible. I do want to back up a little bit because you mentioned David Carson.
Yeah.
How did you get that job? Because David Carson, for those of you in the audience who don't know, is like one of those big name designers, kind of like the name of the 90s in a weird way.
Yeah, definitely. I met him at a talk he was giving in Florida when I was studying at SCAD. He was doing a talk in St. Augustine, and he was mingling afterwards, and I started talking to him. And yeah, then he emailed me and offered me an internship.
Just out of the blue?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that he was really good at helping students kind of get them some exposure. So it was just for the summer. I just went up there and worked with him for about 3 months. He wasn't there a lot. He was traveling a lot, doing a lot of talks and conferences. And so I probably would have loved to have worked more with him and got more from him, but it was still cool to be in his space and be exposed to all the type of work that he did and everything that obviously he was super iconic. I was obsessed with his work when I was in college. I wrote like papers on him. And so it was a pretty amazing thing to get a chance to go work for him. So
you were at least comfortable in the grunge design space that he like kind of is the heart of in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming from an art background, when you go into design, I love the idea of like art for art's sake, not just design for functional sake necessarily. And so David Carson spoke to a lot of us in those days about that, because it was kind of take something which is supposed to communicate, but break it up and make it crazy, and let's see if it breaks all the rules, but yet it still communicates. And there was something really interesting about that. And so I don't necessarily don't design in his style, but I think that his work was very artistic. It felt very much like fine art in the design world, as opposed to being thought out practical design, which obviously is so much of the design world.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's very, I mean, there's good and bad to it for sure. It is its own thing. And like I think in a lot of ways, I think the grunge design movement is kind of coming back right now as we are thinking about like what the place is of the designer in the new landscape that we face. Because I think there's a certain level of chaos that only a human can make that is like art that a machine is not going to be able to.
No, exactly.
It feels also very genuine for just how chaotic the world feels.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, we're also right back to 90s fashion again, aren't we? So it kind of
very much
like
so.
Reflects all the same type of aesthetic. I think with the David Carson stuff too, he was doing Raygun magazine and Surfer magazine, and as you see, I was very into the whole surf industry and scene in those days, and so his work was very much the aesthetic of that style a little bit. And so the kind of street culture, the youth culture, especially Californian youth culture, was like my dream when I was younger. I was like, ooh, I want to go live in California and be part of that whole scene.
And you got to do it.
And I did, and it was amazing. I loved it.
I mean, O'Neill's about as big as it gets.
Yeah,
for that.
and they invented the wetsuit too. So even though it was a product design job, it was amazing to work. Like Jack O'Neill invented the first wetsuit in 1952, and it was really cool to be in a building that had all this history and heritage and photographs of him from back in the day, and his family still runs the business, and it was a cool thing to be able to see. It's like the core product of the surf industry is the wetsuit. So.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So you're like making the company's bread and butter.
Yeah, there were only 4 of us designing wetsuits, and I was doing all the women's, and it was a pretty amazing job, I must say. I feel very lucky to have had the chance to do that, and I'm still friendly with everyone I worked for there, and still surf in O'Neill wetsuits, and I still have a lot of loyalty to that brand from that perspective.
Were you doing much surfing while you were out there?
Yes, all the time. I lived on the beach, so I know. It was a really good life. I
That'll
should
do
have
it.
stayed there.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm sold.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I have no qualifications to design wetsuits, though. Don't hire me for that. I'll do a bad job.
I didn't have any really either, to be honest. You kind of learn as you go.
What are some of the core tricks to like making a wetsuit look good? Because that's got to be such a weird thing to like. Apparel design in and of itself is very strange to think about. But like when the thing is like a full body suit and it is going to change shape completely as you get into it, like.
Something I learned early on is do not make a wide side panel of color, because if you make a wide side panel of color and you put it on a person, it just makes them really wide. So there's some interesting things about like the lines of the body and, you know, where you can place color or where you can place seams to kind of help accentuate or, you know, change the shape of body figures.
Yeah.
You know, I did you mentioned that this podcast is often about mistakes, and I was going to tell you this. So one of the mistakes that I made at O'Neill is when we did these color systems. You created a wetsuit and you designed it in 5 or 6 different colorways, and there was a coding system of how you color wetsuits. And so the first color is like the body color, and then the second and third color, like after lines, is like the armpit color, or this, you know, these different contrast colors. And I designed a woman's full body wetsuit that I put the wrong color first. I put bright coral first. And this is in the time where wetsuits are pretty much all black, and, you know, you'd have accents of colors. And the factory in China made thousands of full coral body wetsuits.
Oh no!
All because I put the wrong color first on a spreadsheet and didn't check it. So
oh shit! What happened to them?
They were able to sell them at discount at like Costco and those kinds of places, and it was fine. But it was a pretty big lesson of like paying attention to small detail. And I think as a young designer, that's something that we often didn't do. At least I wasn't terribly good at, was making sure that I was double checking my work and not sending stuff off too quickly, and just like paying attention to detail. You know, you're all about creating and being expressive, and then you have to go back and make sure that you don't make 2,000 bright orange wetsuits.
Did you end up keeping one of them?
I didn't. I never even saw them. I just knew that had happened, and that now there was all these wetsuits they were trying to get rid of.
That almost seems worse, to know that they're out there and you haven't even like put eyes on them.
The ironic thing now is that those full body colorful wetsuits are actually in fashion. People love them, and they do like full color prints and all these other kind of crazy things. But yeah, when I was working there, women's surfing was kind of new, and I think I was one of the first women wetsuit designers around, and so it was still quite safe. All the buyers at surf shops are male, and so they were like, I just want a black wetsuit for a woman, or pink or blue. You know, women are either pink, blue, or black, which is obviously, I was in there like, what are you talking about? Let's make like ox blood red wetsuits, and let's do this kind of olive green wetsuits for girls. But yeah,
you were ahead of your time.
Yeah, totally. It's all me. It was a lot of fun.
So, you got some more stuff in there.
Well, this is commercial stuff. So this is for a product called Marmite, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with. It's kind of an English, Australian, South African type of product. It's like a black spread that you put on toast. It's made out of soy extract.
Oh, yeah.
And people hate it or they love it. It's kind of one of those things. I love it. I have a supply of Marmite in my house still here in Portland, and I eat it most days. But so this was around a Halloween campaign where it was kind of, don't be afraid of the dark. Don't be afraid of the dark, Marmite, but don't be afraid of the dark. And so it was all these like famous horror characters and their version of a Marmite sandwich.
Oh, really?
So this would be it. And this is his like kids' plates and like kids styled Marmite sandwich. And he's like offering it to you in the dark. He's like, don't be afraid of the dark. Try Marmite. And then that one would be Pinhead and his like Pinhead version of his. And then this one would be Freddy Krueger.
That's incredible.
So you can see the patterning is still there.
The patterning
look
is
at
still there.
sleeves.
And you're also like still playing in that kind of moody space. Like these have a black wash around them. Yeah. But like this, it's incredible actually. And these are also at huge scale.
Yeah.
These are like 20 by 30s as well.
So this is right before I got my Wacom Cintiq. So I actually still did all of this by hand.
Wow.
Now I would do that in Photoshop most likely with my Cintiq, but this was back in the day when I actually still like to draw by hand.
But I mean these are so evocative, and like it's kind of incredible how little you need to like identify like, oh yeah, there's Pinhead.
Yeah, totally. Just need a couple of pins and like nails coming out of sandwiches, and there you go. Yeah,
or Freddy Krueger just in the fedora.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, I guess you do see his skin, so it's not like Indiana Jones or something, but like it's And his claws.
And his claws. Well,
sort of
I was kind of wondering when you were going to mention that.
Yeah, the claws are actually kind of
things.
the thing that he's known for more than anything else.
Yeah.
He's like, I think he could, if he wasn't wearing a hat, you might say to him, hey, Freddie, new look? I like your new look. Did you get a haircut? But if he's not wearing the claws, then I think that would be a bigger conversation. You'd want to have a conversation with him then because he's not going to claw you.
Yeah, he's not going to cut you to pieces.
Yeah. In your dreams.
Yeah, but as you can see, he cut the toast into nice little thin slices.
He did.
It's all very conceptual.
So when did you do this work?
These when I was working for Publicis in Cape Town.
Yeah.
We did a lot of work for Marmite. It was actually some of my most fun work that I've done. We got to do these really fun campaigns around this spread, which is sort of a heritage product in the way that peanut butter probably is here in America. So
very much so.
It has like all this space to play, and we did a lot of different campaigns around Halloween because obviously it is a dark spread and people hated all of it. So it's got like this fun, like polarizing aspect to it. And so we got to play a lot with like Don't Be Afraid of the Dark and all these different campaigns that we could do around Halloween. But yeah, they were a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So like a lot of your drawing too is very realistic. How did you make that transition into like kind of what you do illustratively?
I think that is kind of one of the challenges, especially I think when you start drawing quite young. Like I've been drawing like my whole life. And when I was a teenager and you spent all this time drawing, the idea of a good drawing was a realistic drawing. It was like trying to get the depiction right, the person right, being able to draw them. So you spent a lot of time and a lot of energy being able to be realistic because that made me feel like I was a good artist. And then going off to college and then being exposed to illustration, you now have to like break a lot of those rules. And I often feel like people who can't draw probably are a little bit have an advantage because you can then find your style a little bit easier. Well, I don't know if it's easier. I don't want to assume how it is with people, but I feel like you're freer to do that. Whereas when you come from a background of like illustrative drawing and fine art and trying to be accurate, it's a little bit harder to just distort things and break those rules and try to find a more personal style. I've always found with illustration, never quite knowing what my style is because it took a long time to like, no, that doesn't need to look like that. Those eyes don't have to be aligned in that way. Let's move that ear into the wrong place because it looks better. Like it's just...
Picasso it up.
Yeah, just try to do that. And I think that it takes a lot of experimentation and allowing yourself to break those rules to be able to do that. And when you start in realism, it's harder to be okay with doing that.
It is. And it's interesting also to think of that in relation to like what we were talking about with like grunge design and David Carson and all that. Because that like I think he's talked about like he doesn't really have like the formal design background so much.
He was a teacher.
Yeah. Like it is coming from this place of like just falling into like I can use this as an art form and do whatever with it rather than like knowing all those rules and then having to force yourself to break them.
Exactly. I think that's harder to do. And it's depending on how you are as a person, I think you want it to be good. And so the first time you try to make it not realistic, it's not good. And then you're like, oh, this is terrible. Like, I've got to go back to being safe and realistic because we know that's good.
Yeah. Well, and that also gets into like the like terrible trap that I still face myself of like, I want this to be a certain way. And then you just try with all your might to make it that way and just lose endless sleep. You know,
completely.
It's no good.
The one thing I have learned in design is that what I picture something to look like at the beginning of a project is never what it looks like at the end of the project. Never. So you got to just enjoy the journey.
You have to.
It's never going to be able to be what you pictured in the beginning.
Yeah. And that's such a valuable lesson for students. Hey, whatever your first idea is, don't get too attached to it because if you try to pursue that to the end of the earth, then you'll be miserable.
Yeah. And you haven't done the design process, right? Like the design process is what makes you come up with new ideas and challenge things. And that's what gets you to where you're going. So
you got to feel it out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
So you after this, you go back to South Africa.
Yeah.
You start at Publicis.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the start of like your design career.
Yeah.
Like
that's right.
And part of what you're working on is like we looked at the Marmite campaign. What other stuff are you doing out there?
So Publicis is an advertising agency. So I was working in the design side of it, but it's mostly for campaigns. So lots of like point of sale, lots of packaging design, lots of branding. We worked on like Red Bull logos, those types of things. But very cool. Like I feel like I was quite lucky to join that agency at the time that I did because the design team was very young and progressive and really interested in doing great, good work. And unfortunately, well, I don't know if it's unfortunately, but in advertising, obviously the award circuit is kind of a big thing. It's how they kind of get their credentials. And so I was lucky enough to work on a lot of projects that had been kind of pinned as pieces potentially to enter into awards. And so that's where you really get to flex your creativity and you get to do interesting things. And it's this nice collaboration between the brand and the agency because you're trying to do something that makes it's different and cool.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my work for the time that I was in Cape Town was focused on that type of work that was really trying to be as creative and as cool as it could be. And that's where I got to do a lot of illustration. So that was pretty fun.
It's pretty exciting. And I was kind of shocked when I was looking at your biography that like there's a canned lion.
Yeah, that was fun. For Marmite, actually.
Oh, that was for the Marmite campaign.
Not this campaign, a different one. But yeah, it was as to launch the campaign, we did like this, what did they call it? Direct mail piece, which is a very unsexy word. But basically we targeted
I've made a lot of those. Yeah.
Targeting a bunch of influencers to get them talking about what we were doing with Marmite. And so we customized a Marmite jar for all the 13 influencers, and we redesigned their labels, and we wrote copy that was in the tone of voice of their blog, and we made these like cool pieces. And so it was a packaging for all of that, and that's what we won the can lion on.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah,
just like
really
these
fun.
little precise targeted things.
But that's kind of, I think, what I really like. I love thoughtful design and thoughtful illustration, and you look at who you're designing or targeting and you really try to make it clever and interesting for who they are. I think that was really fun. So we got to do 13 different Marmite jars, but each one was unique and different and looked really cool and had custom illustrations.
That's also one of those things where like, how long did it take to do each one of the jars?
Well, it's advertising, right? So like everything is done on like 14-hour days. And I think we had 2 weeks to do the whole project or 3 weeks. I don't even know. Maybe it was a bit longer, but it was obviously
it's
late
like
nights.
all day,
all
weeks.
nights.
Yeah.
Pizza parties in the evening at the office because everybody's staying there till like 12 o'clock and working and that kind of thing, which was fun. I mean, to be honest, advertising is a lot of fun when you're doing those kind of exciting projects and you're getting to be creative. It's not so fun when you're doing, I don't know, web banners until 10 o'clock at night. But no offense to web banners.
What could not be fun about web banners? Everyone loves them. Punch the monkey.
Yeah. But no, that was pretty fun.
It seems like great, exciting work up until a certain point where you want to have an outside life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when I kind of got back into design, so it's really what I think helped me get to where I got to and got to work on the projects that I wanted to work on. And I think it just was because you just put your heart and soul into it. You know, when you're a designer, you don't do it because you chose to be a designer. There's lots of other ways that you could make money that would be smarter than being a designer. You do it because you love it, and it's you get into the zone when you're making things and you just stay there and enjoy the process. And so I think I've been lucky that I've got to do a lot of work in my life that I've really loved, and I can just sit there and design, and it's fun. Yeah. I know, sorry, that's so cheesy. But.
No, I cheese it up. Cheese and Marmite, not a good combo though.
Actually, I love cheese and Marmite. That's what I eat, just toast with Marmite and cheese.
I can't imagine.
Oh, it's best. I'm going to send you a Marmite jar. You're going to have to try it.
I will. I mean, I'm down to try weird foods.
It tastes like soy sauce on toast.
I'm less sure now. That it's salty?
It's salty.
Salty would not be what I expected out of Marmite.
It's so good.
All right. I mean, sure. I'm down. So at what point at Publicis did you decide you wanted to be doing something different and also wanted to be back in the States? Because that was kind of the hinge point too.
Well,
there, right?
I freelanced for 2 years before we moved back here. But I wanted to do more illustration. And I think I was a creative director at Publicis, and so I was doing a lot more meetings and a lot more, not as much of the work anymore. And I just, as I said, I've always liked to draw. I try to turn every project into a drawing project. When I say draw, I don't mean pen. I just mean create things, illustrate. So I went freelance, and I got this really cool studio with some amazing Cape Town illustrators, and I got to work with some really talented people that I really enjoyed, and I got to a lot of freelance illustration work. So that's when, coming off the back of a lot of these awards, kind of got a lot of recognition, I was able to go on my own, and then agencies would come to me and hire me as the illustrator for these projects. So instead of dealing with the client side and the business side and the creative direction side, I got to be the sort of service provider who made the illustrations, which was nice for a while to do that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Get yourself back, like not on paper, but
just drawing
directly.
Yeah,
as the creative, like that's got to be invigorating.
And I was very into lettering at that stage. I was doing a lot of lettering, and I was doing a lot of lettering for exhibitions. There's a gallery in Cape Town called Salon 91, which was really supportive of all of us young designers that were coming up doing cool stuff. So we were constantly doing exhibitions with my friends, and I went through a phase where I made a lot of laser cut wooden typography pieces.
Oh.
This is before, the cheesy kitchen, whatever sayings that people have now that are laser cut out of wood all over their houses.
The stuff that you get at Home Goods.
Yes,
and
I didn't make any of that, but it was similar, like laser cut out of wood. But I would do plexiglass and I'd paint it and I'd make these big pieces. And I started showing a lot of that stuff around Cape Town. So I was illustrating and I was doing a lot of lettering work and kind of showing in galleries, which was really fun.
And that must have been like really exciting too, because that's like kind of the heyday of lettering.
Yeah, it was.
Like the reemergence. Like even like 5 years earlier, I feel like lettering did not have the presence in the design scene.
No, it was definitely like the time to be doing that. It was interesting how bad that some of my lettering was. When I look back at it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really had some learning to do, which is cool. It's always good to be able to see that you've improved.
I feel like every letterer I talk to is like that too.
Oh,
like,
it's funny.
Kyle Latender, a fast guest, he was looking at stuff of his past work that was absolutely gorgeous and going, I know.
You see all the things, right? Like all the angles of the letters or the counters or oh my gosh.
What was I
terrible.
thinking?
Like that's terrible. But anyway, it was still a lot of fun to do that. And yeah, it was a good time. And then we moved back to the States. My husband is American, so he wanted to come back.
Oh.
He wanted to work here, and that's why we came back to the States. That's why we're in Portland.
Is he? So he's from Portland?
He's not. He's from California, Southern California. I met him when I worked for O'Neill.
Oh.
He's a little blonde California surfer boy.
So you brought a little bit of the California back home with you.
I did. He was back with me for a while, and then we moved back here.
Yeah. What was the transition like? Because you going from freelancing there to Murmur, like you're sort of back almost in sort of an agency type world.
It was a couple of years before I joined Murmur, though.
Yeah.
When we moved here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I will say it was a pretty hard change because I went from being in a great place with freelancing and having a reputation because I worked in these agencies in South Africa to moving here and kind of all of a sudden not having that network anymore, which you don't really realize is going to happen. You kind of assume that you just carry on doing what you're doing. So it was a little bit of a readjustment when I got back here, and then still working for a lot of South African clients, but the currency exchange makes that not very beneficial.
Oh, yeah.
Just trying to network here. But I'm working now more for Murmur because I started freelancing for them a couple of years ago. I just started helping out in some projects and I really like them. They're wonderful people. And then, I don't know, the owner and I are friendly and we were talking and they were looking for a new art director to join them. And I just want to work with people. I like people and I wanted to meet people in Portland and I wanted to make a network here. And so, yeah, I've been with them now just over a year and it's great. It's branding and packaging, which is really cool. Yeah, it's quite a lot of local, but also just national brands. Like branding, logos, and then the packaging that we get to do, which is really cool. There's some very talented people in the States. It's nice to kind of work out here and get to see exposure to all the cool things that people are doing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I should explain why there was a gap there. I had kids. I had two kids.
Oh,
so
that'll do it.
That'll kind of pause things a little bit. I had two little kids.
Was that also part of the rationale of moving back to the States?
Yeah, I think for my husband it was.
Yeah.
So they're amazing, but they keep me very busy. Those late nights of advertising agency work are, not really possible when you have a 9-month-old child. So
No.
They're older than that now, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I love having kids are so creative too. So I don't know. There's definitely something amazing about seeing my kids starting to draw and they come and they sit and they draw on my Wacom with me and they love like learning how to do that. And I don't know, it's just cool to be able to pass that on.
Do they have some of your proclivity towards patterning and stuff like that?
Oh my gosh, my daughter is all patterns. It's so funny. She's like everything she makes. She made a Play-Doh Christmas ornament yesterday and the whole thing is polka dot patterns and stripes.
In Play-Doh?
With a little knife, like a little etching into
Wow.
it. And that's actually very funny to see her. She does things that is just so graphic. I'm like, oh, you're a good little artist, but you're very graphic. I'm curious to see where you go with this.
There's something genetic.
I
in
think
there.
so.
Yeah.
I think so.
You need the patterns.
I know, lots and lots of patterns. Lots of patterns. It's so funny. I think that's the one thing that with my career, like if I look back at stuff, just way too much going on early on. I'm so glad as you get older, hopefully you start to tone it down and learn that more is not more. You know what I mean?
I hope I learn that someday. It's so true. It's so true because you in a way you kind of need that though when you're young because you need that space to be able to experiment in lots of different things. And, make the mistakes.
Oh, totally. Put a flower pattern next to a dot pattern, next to a stripe pattern, next to a heart pattern, next to a silver pen, and then put an overlay on top of it.
Pattern explosion.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
But you got to do it. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, sure, no problem. It's been a lot of fun to talk to you.
If people want to follow you, Dani, where can they go? Where can they go
I
to
have
see?
an Instagram and a website. So Instagram is Dani_Loureiro. And then I have a website and all the rest of that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for chatting to me and being interested in creative journeys.
Oh,
it's been a very different,
it's
all
what
over
it's
the
all
place
about.
creative journey.
And thank you to everybody out here who's hearing this. If you like the show and maybe you're hearing it for the first time, maybe you're an old listener, a classic listener, why not subscribe in your podcast player of choice? It's not always an ASMR podcast. Sometimes it's another thing. Actually, I think the episode that's going to be right before this is going to be the most opposite of an ASMR podcast that I've ever done. So yeah, if you want to find this show, you're already doing a good job because you are hearing it. So that's a pretty good sign that you're in the right place. But you can also search for the show's title on most services or visit our website, dididothat.design. That's where you can find some good images that go along with each and every episode of the show. And if you want those images delivered directly to you, you can follow us on Instagram, you can follow us on YouTube, or you could follow us on LinkedIn because I've been using that a lot lately. Hashtag make LinkedIn weird again. That's what we're doing, I guess. So anyway, I'm Sean Schumacher. This is Did I Do That? And as we always say at the close of every episode,
did I do that?
That's what we say. Okay, bye. So I have two options for what the opening bit could be.
Okay.
And I kind of want to leave this to you. One is fire alarms. And the other option is beans.
Beans or fire alarms?
Yeah, beans or fire alarms. Pick your poison.
Let's go with fire alarms.
Okay.
That sounds kind of fun. Not quite sure where this is going to go.
Oh, it's... yeah. I'm not quite sure either, to be honest. This fire alarms one is going to be weird. Okay, here we go. All right. Yeah, we should probably mute our phones. I'm actually going to go into focus mode because I am looking for apartments. And so I get contacted all day by random companies.
That's funny.
There's one realtor now every day, 5 days straight, just after 8 a.m., texts me the exact same message. Hi, Sean, any further interest in this apartment?
Oh, that's funny.
And then her name. And it's just like, wow. I didn't respond to the other four. So I would guess no, personally.
Yeah, but she's obviously trying hard, right?
No, she's got to move this place. And she does not want to budge on price or anything.
What part of Portland are you looking in?
I'm to the point in the apartment search where I'm looking in everywhere.
Okay.
Because it's bleak. It's a bleak summer. Like I started this summer kind of feeling excited because I was like, wow, for what I'm paying down here, you could get a house in Vancouver, Washington. And that's just a poisonous idea to introduce into your brain.
It's a lot more travel. It's a lot more driving.
More travel. It would just be obscene. And I think the biggest one, I should actually read this off because it's so. There's this house. Here he is. That I looked at. And it's like this guy, this old guy, you know, he's clearly owned this place for 40 years, but I go to look at it and it's in terrible shape.
Oh, no.
Like, it has a thing I've never seen in an apartment before here, which is that it didn't have floor in the bathroom.
Didn't have floor.
Didn't have floor. It had underfloor, but not floor. And to me, I think the floor part is the most important part of the floor. So I text him like, I would maybe be interested, but I feel like maybe it needs some tile or something in the bathroom, like pretty open. And the response that I get is this. There are several remedies as floor is solid, but hit with many leaks in the past. Tiles can't be put over it due to weight, but all gaps can be filled with caulk and rugs or mats can be placed in walk areas. So
is it a concrete floor base? I guess it wouldn't be. It'd be like
this
a
is
wooden,
a wooden
plywood
floor base
wooden
with
floor
like
base.
gaps in it going into the basement. So all I can take away from his answer is, in spite of trying to frame it as floor is solid, I get the feeling floor is not solid due to leaks.
I get the feeling that leaks are degrading that floor pretty seriously.
And I will go in and decide to say take a shower as one does in their shower, and then I will just be in the basement one day. And that will be exciting. Because how the fuck much could tiles weigh?
It sounds like he took the floor out because the leaks destroys the floor. And so he just lets the water go straight through the plywood.
You know what? That's actually a really good read on it. I bet that is what happened. Because it doesn't make any sense for it to just have underfloor either. It's
hysterical. But the underfloor, if it's made out of wood, it's just going to rot if it gets wet. So.
And it has.
So it's just going to, you're right. You're going to land up in the basement rotten, one day.
And then there's clearly some structural issues too. You're really trying to move that place in spite of your desperate effort not to improve it in any way.
Oh my gosh, it's
what
so
a
funny.
guy.